Welcome, viewers, to this maiden edition of Insight, as the main program in the Chronicle that will deal with issues that matter in the Gambia and in the sub-region. In this edition today, our guest is Sheriff Kijera. Sheriff Kijera is the chairman of the Gambia Center for Victims of Human Rights Violation. Sheriff, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Tendeng.
It's our pleasure. Sheriff, can you tell us about the Center for Victims of Human Rights Violation in the Gambia?
Well, the Victim Center, as many people know it, is established by the victims themselves. It was established in April 2017, immediately after the fall of the Jammeh regime. These were victims that have suffered a series of human rights violations in the hands of the former dictator Yahya Jammeh and his the enablers. We have registered more than 1,000 victims with the Victim Center of various categories, from enforced disappearances to extrajudicial killing, torture, gender and sexual violence, and arbitrary arrests and unlawful detention. So we have different categories of victims registered with the center. We provide support to them in the form of psychosocial support and medical assistance to some of these victims who have serious medical issues as a result of the torture and a series of human rights violations they suffered from the previous regime of Yahya Jammeh. So we have an MOU with the TRRC. We are working in close collaboration with the TRRC and the Ministry of Justice.
Mm-hmm. What is the specifics of that collaboration with TRRC? I can recall the center in its early days taking statements from the victims. Is that something you exchange with TRRC? Did you collaborate with TRRC in that regard?
Yeah, we had an MOU which specifically outlined the rule of our engagement, basically to complement the work of the TRRC. We provide them data on the list of victims that are registered with the Victim Center. We have also joint outreach missions across the country for registration purposes, because the Victim Center has established regional focal points across the country. So we provide those support to the TRRC whenever they want to reach out to the victims across the country.
Mm-hmm. Now that we're talking about TRRC, when it was being launched in 2019, you addressed the President of the Republic, that is President Adama Barrow, in these terms. You said, we don't want you to leave as President Jammeh. You also added, we don't want to have another financial commission like the one of the Jammeh Commission. And then you added a very strong word, that is to say, you have to work hard to earn the respect of the Gambian people. Do you think that the president, 2 years after this, do you think that the president is paying heed to your advice?
Well, politicians and their mindsets, you know, politics is a game of vested interest. So one could argue that basically they will drift from one end to the other. I'm not sure whether President Adama Barrow actually live up to the expectation of the Gambian people. When we elected him into office in 2016, we continue to see alleged perpetrators and enablers still being recycled back into the system, which is quite disheartening to the victims. From the various testimonies we are hearing from the Truth Commission, and also corruption, I think, is also in the increase in the government. One could also commend the government for establishing the Transitional Justice Program, which have established the National Human Rights Commission, the TRRC, the Constitutional Review Commission, and the Security Sector Reform Program. The Security Sector Reform Program, which is actually a big disappointment, because the reform process hasn't been quite methodical as it's supposed to be. We continue to see, those that have been adversely mentioned in the Truth Commission still continue to hold key positions in government, which is quite disheartening and very, very disappointing.
About the security sector reform, we've been told recently by the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Interior that things are going fine, things are moving. But concretely, Gambians don't see that change, because one aspect that the security apparatus was banking on to meet human rights violations on the Gambian people is the Public Order Act, and it's still here. You have a lot of legal setup that was actually enforced by Yaya Jammeh, that is still valid under President Adama Barrow. It means that he can use them anytime he wants.
Well, the objective and the concept of the whole transitional justice program is to reform our institutions, both in the administration of justice, legal and institutional framework, and the entire governance architecture. Should have been taken into much consideration in the reform process. But we still continue to have quite a handful of alleged perpetrators still in the system, both in the security service and the civil administration of the government. So I'm not sure whether the government has made enough progress as far as the reform process is concerned.
Does your center goes to take steps as far as writing letters, writing memos to the Ministry of Justice to say, hey, what are you doing about this?
We will still continue to engage the government through the Ministry of Justice constructively, both in our engagements. We had a series of meetings with the former Attorney General, Batambiru. Well, with Batambiru, he has an open door policy with the Victim Center. Anytime we want to see him, we will see him. But we still have an opportunity to pay a visit to the Ministry of Justice, which we are planning to do in the next coming weeks. But actually, the Minister of Justice, the current Minister of Justice, actually paid us a courtesy call at the Victim Center. He promised to take on board all our concern with regards to the alleged perpetrators still working in the system, and the reparation aspects, and also the health issues of some of these victims as well. So the minister promised that especially reparation is one of his priority. And also we also talk about post-TRRC prosecutions, which are in discussions with the various stakeholders. We had a virtual conference some time ago in June and in September with Stephen Rapp and Rick Brody and other stakeholders of the Jammeh to Justice campaign.
We will come to that later, but one aspect of insights is that we ask Gambians to ask you questions.
Ngaje ko jana komisono fele anata atambita femmamboje adu ngaje ko santen million to nyimmatana ya ko kento la woni fele santen ibe tama kan bango kan adu be halani kan adu kuma jama'a ka fo so fo mansa kunda ite jiko so mansa kunda ka fo be ko ni be o dam wala ko fo ibe ate dam so lafa nyine ka sabu ngala modu tu.
Well, post-TRRC recommendation is a major concern to all of these victims because of we learned from the experience from the government white paper on the Janneh Commission report, which was basically on a selective justice. We have seen some of these, some of those that have been indicted by the Janneh Commission report, actually sacred cows, you know. So victims are very, very concerned when it comes to the recommendations of the TRRC. But one could argue that the Janneh Commission report is about the financial aspect. This is about the gross human rights violations. Many people lost their loved ones. We have so many videos as a result of the human rights violations of the Janneh government. So we know that the TRRC is doing a great job, and we expect that they will write a good recommendation. But our major concern is whether the government will have the political will to implement those recommendations.
What would you do then if it comes out to be selective justice, like with the Commission on Financial Dealings of Yahya Jammeh? What would an organization like yours do to defend the interests of the victims?
Well, I think that already there is a Jammeh to Justice campaign, which various stakeholders are part of the campaign. From here to Ghana, we have seen the Jammeh to Justice Ghana and the Jammeh to Justice Gambia. Basically, if the government does not own up to its responsibility and obligation, to try those that are, that bears the greatest responsibility in atrocity crimes committed during the Jammeh era, we will resort to international and courts, the regional courts, to make sure that there is justice for the victims.
Mm-hmm. There we are. As we speak, there is no arrest warrant, international arrest warrant for Yahya Jammeh. Michael Sankorea, one of the henchmen of Yahya Jammeh, has been arrested and charged in America. Usman Sonko, who was the brain behind a lot of actions by the junglers, is currently being tried in Switzerland. You also have the Ghanaians being very active in Ghana to get their judiciary system active on Jammeh. But it's quite not what we have here. The transitional justice process kind of has taken over everything. Is this not an indictment of this process, that people, the victims, believe that they have to resort to external courts instead of ours to get justice served?
Well, in all fairness, it will be too early to form a judgment or a conclusion on the outcome of the TRRC recommendations, because that is the design of the TRRC, that it is a truth-seeking process. All the other mechanism will be put on hold, like the justice accountability mechanism will be put on hold, because we already had a truth-seeking process. And in effect to that, there will be recommendations for post-TRRC prosecutions. So it will be too early now to say whether the government has the political will to try those that bears the greatest responsibility in a court of law. But one would have put more pressure on the government of Adama Barrow, or whichever government comes in after the December elections, because we are in election year. The TRRC will present their recommendation in June, and the president has 6 months to consider the recommendation of the TRRC, which will be after the election year. So we are not sure whether Adama Barrow is going to be elected into office for a second term, or we will have a new president. But whoever got elected into office, well, you have a great job to do. We will hold you into task and make sure that those recommendations are implemented to the letter.
Is your organization a civil party to these judicial actions that have been taken outside, like the trial of Usman Sonko? Are you a civil party to the trial?
We are collaborating with them. We provide victims that will provide evidence and to present themselves as witnesses to the Usman Sonko cases. Initially, we had a series of interviews at the Victim Center. I'm trying to coordinate with those that are responsible for witness testimonies and all that. I don't want to name some of these victims, but we are having a close collaboration with those that are part of the process.
One way to gauge the political will of the government is to see that it creates the legal environment, the legal framework that will enable the recommendations of TRRC be implemented. Unfortunately, a lot of us and every Gambian almost banked it on the new constitution to come. That has not, we know now that it won't come unless they agree to do their political jigsaw to get it implemented. Don't you fear that the prospect of these recommendations from the TRRC get completely jeopardized because the time is short and not all political parties are definitely willing to make concessions to get this new constitution done?
Well, it is quite disappointing with the defeat of the progressive draft constitution at the National Assembly. To that effect, the Victim Center actually wrote to the United Nations Secretary General and copied to all the development partners of the Gambia government. I think the government also is on immense pressure to see to it that they reintroduce the draft constitution to the National Assembly for consideration. And with that, I think they have recruited the international idea to dialogue between the other political parties for consensus building to reintroduce the draft constitution. Last week we had a technical committee meeting. We had been told advice on the progress made so far with the dialogue with the political parties. So the ministry is already drafting the amendments on the draft constitution at the moment. Hopefully, I think the contentious issue, the main contentious issue is with the retroactivity provision of the constitution. Personally, I find the retroactivity provision as quite injustice. It is totally an injustice. I think we should have a 2-term limit. For any president that will come in, but to apply the retroactivity will create more confusion. But I'm sure all the other political parties are willing to see that we have a new draft constitution to usher us in the Third Republic, because we cannot go to this election with the 1997 constitution. It is quite problematic for the implementation of the TRRC recommendations because it does not have provisions that will take into account command responsibilities. And also there are not other international human rights provision that will take into account the TRRC recommendation for post-TRRC prosecutions. So because it is not quite in cooperation with the customary international law provisions. So, but with the progressive new draft constitution, they guarantee that you are still able to have those that bear the greatest responsibility to be tried domestically or with a hybrid court.
Well, about the retroactivity is very debatable. Every Gambian with his opinion. I am, for example, of the view that based on the context that prevailed before drafting the constitution, it was a kind of gentleman agreement that it wouldn't have been a problem. Retroactivity sometimes poses, it's debatable in law, whether to use it or not, but when parties build a consensus, they can apply it. And I think the drafters went on the view that this was what Gambians wanted, and then in the process somebody, retropedal, and then there we are. We hope, like you, that they will understand the interest that all Gambians have in this new constitution, and get it done. So we will move with the next question by one of our viewers, who will ask you also what he thinks about happenings in relation with the victims.
Sirif Kijera may ko laaj naka la victim center di liggéeyee ak nguur gi ci affaire yi victims yi nga xam ne dëgg ñu ngi war a am overseas treatment mooy doon laajte victim center fan lañ toll ci liggéey boobu ak naka la ñoo fexee ba nga xam ne victims yi nga xam ne ba léegi mënuñoo am overseas treatment ñu mun a dem am overseas treatment mun a am seen taw feex
I think the TRRC has done a great job on that. Recently, 4 victims underwent medical treatment in Turkey. Currently, we have 3 of them back in the Gambia. It's only one that is in Turkey at the moment, receiving foreign medical assistance. And there is currently we have about 4 victims that are in Senegal also for medical treatment sent by the TRRC. And all the victims also continue to have local treatment from our various hospitals and clinics across the country. So all been taken care of by the TRRC. I think the problem here is lack of communication. I think what the TRRC should have done is to get the public informed about the progress that they have made so far as medical assistance to victims are concerned, because they have also been providing educational support to a lot of families, victims' families across the country as well, both from the junior, senior level, and also to the tertiary institution as well. So, but I think with the lack of information, and the public is not well informed, so the progress that have been made so far, people are not privy to those information. But I think the TRRC has done a good job in that. And also, as a victims center, we had been providing medical assistance to a lot of victims. We had an agreement with the Senela clinic at Kijera that we continue to send victims for medical examination and medical treatment. Recently, I just returned from Kaolack, Senegal yesterday. I took about 4 victims on a medical treatment program. They had a very successful medical treatment program. We came back yesterday. They have they have responded very well to the treatment.
What is your reaction to the Supreme Court ruling that Yankuba Toure is not immune of prosecution?
Well, that is the best news so far. As far as the new year is concerned. We have seen the efforts being made by 4 prominent Gambian lawyers, Saliu Tal, Gaysow, Nene Cham, and Abdoulaye Fati. They filed an amicus curiae brief with the Supreme Court of the Gambia as a friend of the court. I mean, to assist the court decide on the immunity, the case of Yankuba Toure. So this has established the fact that none of these APRC criminals are entitled for constitutional immunity. So this has assured the victims that Yaya Jammeh, Yankuba Toure, Edward Singate, and all the AFPRC criminals, junglers, will face justice at the end of the mandate of the TRRC.
So I guess it makes the victims feel a bit more comfortable as regards the abuses that were made by the AFPRC junta.
It is the confidence level. It's a vote of confidence that at the end of the day, justice will be served. It would have been very dangerous, disastrous, if at all Yankuba Toure enjoys the constitutional immunity. So it means that will be the end of the TRRC. There will be no hope as far as post-TRRC prosecutions are concerned.
In October last year, Ambassador Stephen Rapp, an American specialist on international criminal law, visited the Gambia. He met people like you, he met the Attorney General, with regards to how to set up a kind of court, a tribunal, a hybrid court that is going to be used to try either Yaya Jammeh or the likes of Yaya, his collaborators, like it was done in Senegal with Hissène Habré. How far is this process going on?
Basically, there is still an ongoing discussion as far as the post-TRRC prosecutions are concerned. Initially, they had a virtual consultation with the victims' community, to sound their opinion as far as establishing the court for post-TRRC prosecutions is concerned. But the best option would have been to establish a hybrid court because that will take into consideration about international crimes provision as far as customary international law is concerned and other international legal instruments are concerned. But I think there was a general consensus on that a hybrid court would have been the best option to transition into residual mechanism as it has happened in Sierra Leone courts because they had a hybrid court, as they had a special court transitioning to a residual mechanism that a special court was established in the Hague to try Charles Taylor as well. That could be our context can be in that form as well, taking into consideration Gambian elements to be factored, like Gambian lawyers, Gambian judges, basically to have a national ownership of the whole process. So I think we are still on that discussions to see how best we can fare on that. But I know that the Minister of Justice will take lead on that. He will invite all the other stakeholders to further see how best we can agree on some of these terms.
Mm-hmm. Let's take the other question. This one is by one of your colleagues, a collaborator at the Victim Center. Let's see what she has to say.
My name is Aisra Jame. I work with the Gambia Center for Victims of Human Rights Violations as a programs officer. So my question to Sheriff would be, what will be the stance of the Victim Center in the event that the TRRC wraps up its work and then the report is submitted to the government, and it takes time for the government to come out and respond to the public with regards to when they're going to implement the recommendations of the TRRC. So my second question is if reparations is included in the money of the TRRC, and already we've seen government have committed and given $50 million for reparations, right? So whether, and that has been 2 years now, and we haven't had any other commitment from the government. So what is the Victim Center doing together with other civil society organizations to ensure that through the Minister of Justice to ensure that there will be reparations available for the victims who need these reparations? Thank you very much.
Basically, that's $1 million question from all the victims with regards to the recommendations from the TRRC. What is going to happen if the government does not have the political will to implement those recommendations? Well, we still continue to intensify our advocacy on government to take on its obligation to make sure that the TRRC recommendations are fully implemented. We continue to engage other stakeholders like the UN Transitional Justice Project Office, and the European Union, ECOWAS, the National Human Rights Commission, to leverage support, to make sure that the government lives up to its obligation to make sure that the TRRC is not just a roadshow, but one that the government will have the political will to implement those recommendations. We know it is election year. Politicians are pretty much preoccupied with political activities to make sure that they get elected into public office.
In fact, the delay she's asking about is the span that is left between the moment TRRC would make recommendations, the time frame the president has to react on that, and the implementation.
Well, the 6 months has created a vacuum. For the president to comfortably sit on the TRRC recommendation until after 6 months that he can do something about it. That I think that is a legal requirement, that is a mandate, part of the mandate of the TRRC, that they will submit their recommendation in June, because they have an extension from December to June. They had a 6-month extension. So basically they will submit their recommendations in June this year, but the president also have 6 months to review the recommendation and respond to it after 6 months.
He would have been in full year into his campaign.
That will be full year into the campaign. So we have the election on the 4th of December. So he has until 31st of December to make up, to give his view on the recommendation of the TRRC. So basically, politicians, like I say, they are pretty much preoccupied with their political activity.
Well, President Barrow, if you're listening, find means to put together your campaign and the recommendations of the TRRC, because that's what Gambians want. That's what the victims want.
Like I said recently, the legacy of Adama Barrow entirely depend on the successful implementation of the TRRC recommendation.
And the transitional.
And the entire transitional justice project. Because Gambia's transitional justice is going to be used as a model in the whole of Africa. So, but when it fails, everything fails. That is why people were disappointed with the defeat of the draft constitution, because the draft constitution is the bedrock of the transitional justice project. So basically, all the other transitional justice mechanisms are hinged on the drafting of the new constitution.
One thing we can assess him right away is the question asked by Aisha, his commitment with the reparations. Already 50 million have been injected into reparations, but still, after that, the government has gone mute. What do you think about that?
Well, the government initially made a contribution of $50 million. It's almost 2 years now. They promised to make more contributions to the reparation fund. We have heard or seen nothing about that. But I know that the TRRC has just submitted the reparation regulation to the Ministry of Justice to be gazetted at the National Assembly, so that it can be law and binding on the government that they have to implement the TRRC reparation. Victims are entitled for compensation. I'm sure the government, because we had been promised by the minister that reparation is key in the implementation of the TRRC recommendations. So we will meet the minister very soon, in the next week or so. So we'll further engage him on that and see what the government's plan are as far as their contribution towards the reparation fund are concerned.
Let's go to the next question by another follower of Insights and see what he has to ask to you.
My name is Lamin Jai. TRRC is going on, and we've seen revelations from the alleged perpetrators who are bluntly denying of the atrocity that they committed on the innocent Gambians, and their names were adversely mentioned at TRRC. So this is a public concern. As a human rights institution in this country, that Victim Center, what are you going to do with this?
I think this is the most important question I have had so far. And I will use that opportunity to call on the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, to make an arrest warrant for an immediate arrest on the Lamin Jobate, Baba Dini Jobate, Fode Bari, Baba Saho, and Lamin Dabo to be immediately put under arrest because they lied to the commission. Lying to the commission is a contempt of the TRRC proceedings. And basically what they have done in the entire testimony is lying. You know, I mean, they are not to be trusted. And they have been established the fact that they are notorious torturers, notorious criminals, that doesn't deserve to walk freely in our streets. I mean, with the victims, they coming to face with the victims, I don't think it is fair on the victims. It will further re-traumatize them. They have no respect whatsoever to the TRRC proceedings. I think ESA did a good job. Even the chairman, Lamin Sise, did a good job intervening from time to time, trying to, tell the witnesses that their responsibility is to come and tell the truth to the commission. But they were remorseless, you know, they have no empathy, you know, they have no respect whatsoever for the truth-seeking process. I think they should be immediately arrested and sent to Mile 2. They are not better than Yankuba Toure. Yankuba Toure failed to come and testify before the commission, but these people failed to come and tell the truth to the commission. They came to the commission just to appear and lied consistently, you know, to the commission, to the commissioners. I think they should be arrested and taken to Mile 2.
I was in a taxi, this lady who, I don't know, who was definitely shocked, and she was saying, look, these guys were sitting arrogantly on the chair, they were pushing and pulling, and at some point they were even threatening the lead counsel, telling him, you don't ask me this, are you insulting me now, and things like that. Yeah. And it was kind of shocking to see this lady, who apparently has no background about law and psychology and whatever, making such an evaluation, a psychological evaluation of Jobate at the commission. And definitely it is somehow shocking. It is shocking.
Well, I think Baba Dini Jobate, Fode Bari, and the rest, I mean, they represent the despicable face of the old Gambia, of the old brutal system of the Gambia. It is quite shameful that one has to be a Gambian and sit and hear all these, I mean, the gruesome testimonies about how their loved ones were killed, you know, and still these people were remorseless, shameless, you know, and facing the whole nation, you know, still in denial about the fact that all these atrocities actually happened, you know, during their tenure in office. I think the best thing the minister should do is to arrest them and let them face the full force of the law. Because that is what they deserve. The TRRC provided one the opportunity to come forward to the commission and testify truthfully. You know, of course, some of these cases cannot all be prosecuted. At one point, we have to reconcile. We have to heal as a nation. But some of these cases are in international crimes. You know, they cannot be forgiven like that. They have to be prosecuted one way or the other. You know, we have to set precedents that never again. We don't see a recurrence of what has happened during the Jammeh era. So what these people deserve is to go back to Mile 2, to be sent to Mile 2 and face the full force of the law.
Let's go to the last question of our viewers.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Ntelem Falan Sonko. bari la min sonko bari yello fala mela sirif kijera lafte nyinin kala menna yemun lamani yale soto yu mansa kunna ala ko control victimolu benna nyanto soto lale lafte nyinin kala wala.
Well, I don't trust this government, to be quite honest, because they have reneged in a lot of their promises. I mean, that they have made, I mean, during the political campaign
of 2016.
Of 2016. They have not lived up to their party political manifesto that they have promised to the Gambian people. They have disappointed the whole nation. As a government, yes, they did well to establish the transitional justice process because they were not expecting to stay in power for such a long time. What they promised the Gambian people was to come and stay for 3 years and then organize an election, have a new leader that would finish the work of the transitional justice project. But we have not seen that. It is the failure on the part of the current administration. For Gambians to still, we have a change of leadership, but we have the same system in place. We have the same criminals and rogue elements still, holding key positions in government. We have the same system of abuse of authority because we have seen what happens to the 3-year judge now.
They've been arrested.
Yeah, they've been discharged and re-arrested.
Freed and then recharged for the same
crime. That is totally unacceptable. One thing I can tell President Adama Barrow, I said it during the opening of the TRRC, and I will say it again. There is always life after presidency. And I think it is worth planning for that retirement as a head of state. We have seen what happens to other African leaders. And I think he should find the courage and the integrity to uphold the promise that he has made to the Gambian people. That is to deliver the country from dictatorship to the change of good governance, democracy, rule of law, and sanity in our workplaces. But what we continue to see from our politicians is a betrayal of trust to the electorates, and we continue to see their lust for power and ego, to still hold public office. But that is not the essence of our change in 2016 election. We want to see a new Gambia that provide opportunity for all Gambians to provide security and stability for everyone, to guarantee human rights, rule of law, and respect for the inalienable dignity of each and every Gambian. The current dispensation, we do not owe it to them that there is freedom of press, freedom of association. It's we, the Gambian, that brought about that change. And we are going to consolidate that change that we have made in 2016. But what I can advise Adama Barrow is this transitional justice is his legacy. When it fails, he fails.
True. The last question is this. It's about the advocacy your center is doing with regards to human rights, with regards to civic education. It's good to do it at the grassroots level. But don't you think that time has come to return civic education into the education curriculum?
Yeah, I think one needs to nurture the spirit of responsibility at the grassroots level, at the very youthful age of our population. That is the schools. the primary schools to the, secondary level. I think it should be incorporated in our curriculum that civic education, is brought back into the education curricula. We need to nurture the spirit of patriotism, the spirit of nationalism,
Not nationalism, German nationalism.
No,
All
in the
anti-Tobago.
context of
Yeah.
our claiming our birthrights.
Yes.
That is nationalism in the context of your responsibility as a citizen to contribute your quota towards national development, nation building. I would say, because nation building is a never-ending process. It goes on and on till the end of time. No single government will come and finish national development.
And respect for the dignity of the human being.
Of the human being,
regardless of who he is.
Yeah, regardless of your color, your origin, human being is a human being. So we need to have that respect for one another. So I think to provide a sense of ownership, a sense of responsibility as a citizen, we need to change our mindset. You can see the Gambia, we own nothing in this country. You go to Jimpex, all the businesses are controlled by foreigners. Gambians don't want to do anything. You go to the fishing industry. Senegalese are in control of that industry. When the Senegalese go on their magal, there is no fish in the market. You go to the, the construction industry is controlled by the Senegalese. Auto mechanics, the tailors. We need to change our sense, our mindset.
But I've asked a question recently to a few people, and what they tell me is these foreigners are ready to buy their way in. Like when I come, I want to set up my company. If they say 20%, I have the means to do that. But the Gambian will not do that.
Well, I don't think I will quite agree on that at some level. You still have very good Gambians that are doing a very good business in this country. You go to Unique Solution, it's owned by a Gambian. You go to QCell, the majority is quite a significant amount of shares owned by Gambians, and they are doing good in this country. You have good, tough, Mustafa Njai. They are well established. They are Gambians doing good things in this country. I think if we're told 20% of Gambians are willing to do the same, the Gambia will be heaven for everybody. I think those are excuses that we use, that you have to pay your way in to be established. No, that is not the case here. You go to the little small-scale industries, like the tailor, you don't need to bribe a government official to establish a tailor shop. You don't need to bribe a government official to establish an auto mechanic, a workshop. These are little things that, pay dividends highly in national development. We take them as small things, but the majority of them employment will be provided in large-scale industries. So I think we need to focus our energy on that aspect of nationalizing, our industries, nationalizing our development.
We hope the government hear you, because recently they shut down a company, that Julburu, that employs about over 300 people. I think that is also not a good signal that is given from above to people who want to venture into initiatives that can create jobs, that can harness wealth in the country. Sheriff Kijera, we thank you so much. It's our pleasure, and we hope to get you back into our studios again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Tender.
Thank you, viewers. We hope that you have a taste of what is the Chronicle Insights. This is the program that looks into issues that matter. We thank you and see you soon.